Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Mirza Baig, who is the founder of Hammerhead Experiences, which is a 360-degree marketing solution company. Hi Mirza, welcome to ELI.
Hi, thanks, Priya. Thanks for having me over.
I would request you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Sure. So, Priya, my journey as an entrepreneur started way back in 2004. Largely, I run a marketing solutions company, which caters to all marketing needs of all brand advocates, brand owners, or any marketeers as such. Now, predominantly, the intention behind Hammerhead Experiences and my journey with Hammerhead is to try and give an end-to-end solution to any marketeer who deems a requirement which has to be seamless from a perspective of trying to, get a end product which is seamless under online activation, offline activation, or any kind of brand advocacy from a communication standpoint.
Okay.
So I said 2004 was my first entrepreneurial journey. It obviously wasn't Hammerhead. I founded another organization, which was a pure event management organization. I
Mm.
also had a stint of about 2.5 years in a product company where I founded a beverage product. And over the last about 3 years, I've been full time involved with Hammerhead Experiences as an end to end marketing solutions company.
Got you. Uh, as a venture, what is the exact problem that you are solving? You said about the integrated services, the integration between online marketing and offline marketing. So, is that the problem that you are solving? Please define the problem statement.
So, what we realized with time is largely that when I'll probably break it down for you so that the audiences are able to try and understand this a little better. Let's maybe cite an example of, let's say, a brand manager. A
Mhm.
brand manager of, let's say, a product comes to an agency, and first point of contact for them is an advertising agency. So
Mhm.
they go to an advertising agency and they say, hey, you know what? I'm launching this new product. Let's say it could be a beverage, it could be an alcoholic beverage. And he goes to the marketing agency and he says, I want to put out a brand narrative. Then he goes to his PR agency and he says, this brand narrative should make some kind of noise out in the market. He goes to a third party, which is a digital marketing agency, and he says, what the people put out there on, the traditional medium of marketing has to seamlessly flow into online marketing. Then
Mhm.
he comes to an event management company and he says what these guys are speaking should transpire seamlessly into an event launch and also promotions post that. Now, these are five different organizations, and each one has their own thought process and each one has their own creative ability.
Mhm.
Uh, and eventually, what happens is all of this has their own narrative that comes out. While the manager tries very hard to try and stitch, all five ends of the spectrum on marketing, it becomes very difficult for him or her. And this is where Hammerhead comes in. What is the problem? The problem is different heads unable to probably come together because they're working in five different organizations and they're working for different clients, right? It's not like I work only for one beverage company. I would work for 20 of them, right? It could be in the automobile, it could be in any sector. So keeping this fact in mind is where we said, why isn't there one organization which could fit the bill of the requirement, which takes care of all these service offerings that I told you, right? Be it advertising, be it brand strategy, be it PR and digital marketing, be it event management, be it activations. So the idea that stemmed was to try and ensure that the marketeers are able to probably come to us as the cliche term saying one-stop shop. We would say that
Mhm.
we as an organization would be having different verticals, and those verticals are all working together so that there is seamless end production from a perspective of brand narrative that is given to clients. So it's making the client's life easy.
Okay, got you. So, in other words, the complete marketing function can be outsourced to your agency.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got you. Uh, Tell us a bit about your client base. What industries you operate in? What size of companies are best suited for your clientele?
What we have done is we have kind of sliced our business purely into two categories, right? One which is thriving very heavily on what we define as internal communication and internal events and internal activations. This is purely because we are headquartered out of Bangalore. Bangalore is known as the Silicon Valley of India. And given the fact that it has a huge hub of IT and BPOs, we have one vertical or one business, what we call brand solutions business, which works very, very closely in all these IT companies. This is more internal comms. So it could be, brands which are very massive from a perspective of IT, the Indian giants to the international giants in the IT BPO sector. And then we have got a vertical which purely works on product. When I say product, they have a product. Now that product could be as large as an automobile. It could be, let's say, a Land Rover, or it could be as small as probably a small bottle of beverage. So product companies are the ones who are more repetitive in terms of work because they work more from a business to consumer standpoint. So
Mm.
being inside in the minds of a consumer is something that they have to do, largely because of so much of competing brands around them. And hence, how do you probably stand out differently is where we come in as an agency. So clearly, an IT BPO work, which is more for internal communication and internal events and activations, and an external product-based company, which is more tangible.
Mm-hmm. Got you. uh, what is the size of operation right now in terms of how many people are there in your agency, and how many clients are you handling, or what is ticket size, in any such perspective that you can share with us?
Oh, it could be. I would say it's very contrasting in nature, right?
Mm.
Now, for example, given the reason, now if I have to give you where does Hammerhead operate out of, while we have a head office in Bangalore, we also do have offices in Bombay and Delhi. Now, apart from this, every brand who comes to us, and the reason why I speak about brands here and not IT BPO, because IT BPO is confined to that specific geography, right? Whereas a brand has to spread its wings out to different parts of the country, and they have to be available in every nook and corner to try and maximize sales of theirs, and hence there is a lot of work happening nationally.
Okay.
So when it comes to nationally, we comfortably service 50 plus markets in India. It could be what we define as primary markets, which is the Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. It could be secondary markets, which could be the Punas, and probably you could look at places like Chandigarh or maybe Lucknow as secondary markets. And then you have the deeper pockets, which is tier three markets, because India has evolved over the last about 15 odd years, where every small city also is wants to become aspirational and wants to try out new things. So people have realized that it's not about spending power any longer, but it's about being there and being available to consumers.
Mm.
So when it comes to market sizes in India, you can easily say they are top 50 markets where brands are pushing their marketing spends. And that's something which we have the capability to handle as well. There's certain Indian brands who like going internationally as well. And predominantly the international business for the time being is stuck largely between the Middle East market and the Southeast Asian markets. These are what we define as homegrown brands. When
Gotcha.
it comes to spends, we have done work, with as limited as, let's say, 1 million, which is maybe 1 million Indian rupees, which is 10 lakh of rupees, or even going up to probably, I would say, 60 million, which is going up to 5, 6 crores, right?
Mhm.
Team sizes are variable. When you have your head office, that is where you have the maximum trust. We have a team size of about 40 plus, where we have full-time employees as well as part-time employees. The reason why we need part-time employees is because when you have larger projects, you cannot really have them on a payroll because you want to hire them only for their competency. So that's where we are at the moment.
Got you. Tell us a bit about the process of generating clients in terms of how do you generate leads. Of course, there is a big influence of referrals that come along the way, and after you got a lead, what is the process involved before you can convert them to a client? What are the steps involved, like showing case studies, or you know doing a proof of concept work? How does it work in your world?
So largely, Priya, this entire business, which is what I tell my team, is a very relationship-based business, right? Because what are we offering? We're offering something that's intangible. It's a service that we are offering. While the business is very, very massive, it's purely based on The first aspect they look for is what is your capability. Now, if a client is convinced on your capability and he says Hammerhead as an organization can execute this job for me, that's when they roll out a brief. Now, what happens is even organizations have a compliance policy that they have, or a mandate that they have to follow, where they have to follow what they define as a three vendor code. So we come on that under that category where there is a brief given, but parallelly there are another two agencies.
Mm,
Now, while this is compliant, I believe that this also keeps us at the edge of the seat or on our toes. And the reason why I say this is that is where your creative ability is speaking. If you are probably the only one pitching, and if you feel that there is nobody competing with you, there is a tendency for you to become slightly complacent.
mm,
And with this competing spirit of yours is where you want to try and give your best output. You win a few, you lose a few. But what happens is first is the creative tick, saying that are you in my space of what the brand envisions?
mm,
After the creative tick happens and once you're presented, then it probably gets more into execution and planning, right? And then finally, and probably what we define as nail in the coffin is the pricing. Everybody wants to negotiate and they have the right to negotiate. So eventually it finally boils down to costing. So you have the creative ability, the execution capability, and then you have the financial bit that comes in. So we are used to this because we've been doing it for years together and we understand how it works.
mm.
And like I said, you win a few, you lose a few, but that's how the game is. But it's good because we keep our creative genes and juices flowing at all times.
Gotcha. Also, in service industry, client retention is a big thing because acquiring a client is a tough job, but that's look like half of the job. But if you retain your client for a very very long time, both the ticket size goes up every month and the value of the customer kind of goes up as well. So, having said that, tell us what are the things that matter to clients so that they stay with you for a long time, or what is the process of client retention that you follow?
Okay, I'm known in the industry for being very blunt and very upfront, right? So I'll give you an upfront answer here, right?
Yeah.
There is no way you can retain a client.
Mm,
Okay, the aspect of loyalty, unfortunately, in this part of the world, does not exist. I have done work in easily about 7 nations globally, where I have worked with European markets, I've worked with American markets.
mm,
Their word is good enough, and if you're contractually bound, they will stick by you. But unfortunately, in this continent, there is no aspect of loyalty,
mm,
right? And that's unfortunate in a service industry, right? When you're doing great work, you expect the work to become larger. But I don't know. It's probably because there are too many people offering the same kind of service, is
mm,
why marketeers want to go scouting for newer opportunities and newer people. And probably they try and get more value from a perspective of pricing.
okay.
Unfortunately, in our industry, there is no apple to apple comparison, right? It's not
Mm,
like if you're comparing a product, if you're comparing a Land Rover, you cannot compare it to a Fiat. You
yeah.
have to compare it with something which is as big as a Land Rover.
Mm,
But here, comparisons are done in very contradicting manners, and
mm,
that's where you tend to lose out. So, if you ask me, can I retain a client? Is there a method to retain it? I
mm,
continue doing good work, and I hope that I continue getting work because every pitch is a task, every pitch is climbing the mountain, and every pitch has to have good creative ability. And still, you lose some when you probably are. Not in your best on creative ability, or probably they've chosen to drive that Fiat. So
mm.
that's where it is. So I've just been very upfront here. I know I'm going to disappoint a lot of marketeers out there, but this is a fact in India.
Got you. Another similar question. Speaking of apple to apple comparison, marketing is an industry that is driven by quality, and quality cannot be measured. So, there is a client who is offering you, let's say, 10,000 rupees for a particular piece of work. Then another client comes and he is asking same work for probably 5,000 rupees. So, I mean, how do you deal with such situations? Because quality cannot be measured. A 2-hour movie for Netflix costs $1 million, but we make a movie for free on our webcam. So, how do you go about it? The
A very
pricing.
interesting question, Priya. So what happens is with entrepreneurs, It's a very thin line, right? And again, I say this to my team because I've been doing this for 2 decades now. There is something called aggression and there is something called desperation, right? It's a very thin line. That thin line can be drawn by you as an entrepreneur. If you're not going to draw the thin line and start leaning towards desperation, is where you will do that 10,000 buck job even in 2,000 rupees, right? Nobody's here to do favors for anybody, isn't it? Right? You're coming to me because it's an exchange of skill, talent, of something that I bring to the table, and you have to value it. And
Mm,
my value is 10,000 rupees. If you do not value that, as entrepreneurs, we have to take that decision. But because this industry does not have any bylaws that govern you from a
mm,
perspective of saying you need to be, let's say compliant from a perspective of education to this, or maybe you need to be compliant in, let's say, registration in this form. And
mm,
anybody and everybody is getting into this space.
mm,
People who are new are more desperate, and hence they will do that 10,000 buck job for 2,000 rupees.
mm,
So we have to decide, do we really want to go down to the level of 2,000, or do we hold guard and say, hey, you know what, if you want to work with me, this is my price and this is the quality I bring to the table. Now, if you're able to see it, great. If you're not able to see it, I'm sure there are a few clients who are able to see it.
mm. Got you. Awesome. So on next part of the discussion, we will speak a little bit about your personal journey as an entrepreneur. So tell us how did you land on this journey? What made you or what triggered you to choose entrepreneurship?
You know, before I probably tell you about the journey, I think it's important for people to understand that becoming an entrepreneur, the first reason why everybody gets into it is they say, I will be my own boss, right?
Mm, yeah.
I don't want to report to anybody. Hey, you know what? I will take leave when I want to. I will probably, put rules that work for me.
Mm,
Unfortunately, right, what happens before you start the journey, you think you have done it all in life, right? You have your personal space. You're going to probably work at starting late hours, so that's a myth and that's a misconception. When you become an entrepreneur, uh, versus being an employee,
mm,
it exactly multiplies your problems 100x. I'm not even saying 10x, it multiplies 100x,
mm,
because you have a vision for something that you have created, and it's a baby that you have created.
yeah.
And largely, getting to your question in terms of why did I start this, we don't have business owners in our family.
Mm,
We are absolutely a white collared family. Either we have had people, my grandfather, my great grandfather, from both paternal and maternal side, have been in the armed forces. My father himself was a retired army officer from the armed forces,
mm,
right? I've got two older brothers who have been working in good organizations for the last 25 years. Uh, Now, typically, they used to always call me what they define as the black sheep of the family. Black sheep of the
mm,
family because I was very loud. Black sheep of the family was because I was notorious. Black sheep of the family was because I used to always question everything. Right? If somebody said, I'm a Muslim, if somebody said read namaz, my question was, why should I read namaz? It's not
mm,
like I don't want to do it, but I was somebody who believed in asking, and I had this what we define as, as a bug, which typically asks the questions, and if I understood it, I probably stuck by it.
got it.
Uh, the clear-cut communication internally was, in our family, nobody has been an entrepreneur. You
Mm,
need to probably not think of even being an entrepreneur. So, like I said, that bug is what probably made me an entrepreneur. Why not? All right.
mm,
So back in 2004, but the good part was I worked in a corporate environment. I'm a hotelier by profession. I worked with the Taj and the Rahija group of hotels.
mm,
Worked there for about 7, 8 years. Garnered the experience from what I define as setting and putting processes in place. So that exposure of the corporate business gave me an insight as to how you should probably run an organization and implement those processes should you choose to probably start a company. And
mm,
that exposure of 7 years helped me jump into the journey very easily. And was it tough? Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't a cakewalk either. It took a lot of time for me to probably grapple with the situation, because from getting that monthly remuneration to probably trying to generate that remuneration not only for you but for a big set of people you have hired was a tall ask initially. But I think it did work, and that's the reason I've been doing this for the last decade and a half.
Speaking speaking of challenges, tell us some of the biggest challenges that you have faced during your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, so many. So many. I mean, we just can't define and pinpoint it's one or two. But one of the aspects that you probably face time and again, and it continues being, a tall ask for you, is the overall flushing in of funds. Services business is all about profitability, right? You're working on margins which are fairly sizable, gross margins are fairly large. And how do you probably try and up that gross margin is if you have the power of negotiation and power of money, right? While we reinvest back into the business, if there is a godfather, like how you have in product companies. Like I said, I founded a product company where we had investors who came in, pumped in money, and saw the company grow. Unfortunately, in the services business, because it's very people dependent and not product dependent, you don't have too much. So financial push will only make your company grow quicker. It's just that it's not like your company will not grow. What you could do in 5 years, you'll probably do in 2 years. Second is, like you rightly said, retention of people that you train, employees, right? So you hire people, you train them, you groom them to be somebody, and then they immediately decide to move out. So getting people to exactly retrofit themselves again
Hmm.
into the kind of business that you're trying to look at becomes quite challenging for you, right? Third is, I think, more from a perspective of finding people who will think creatively, right? While you have people who think creatively, it's always a tall ask from a perspective of trying to find that person who thinks exactly like what the brand wants. So from a perspective, it's twofold. One is the financial push because you're working on a specific, budget constraint and you're trying to limit and maximize profitability. Second, what I define as manpower which is creative, and manpower which is probably more from a perspective of ability to retain them. So those are the large challenges that this industry has. And obviously, we are very dependent on our contractors, right? When we are dependent on our contractors, the choice of your contractor becomes very super critical, right? Because if somebody's probably giving you as simple as a printout, he has to give it with quality, right? If there is a contractor who's creating a prototype for you, he has to give it with quality. So does the contractor also understand the quality you have to deliver? That's something which comes in to you only with experience. And the minute you have garnered that experience, the contractors you choose to work with are also of repute and quality and international standards. So that's largely the tasks that you have to overcome. I think we learn it by along the way.
Yeah. What do you say is the meaning of entrepreneurship for you? How would you define the term entrepreneur? Maybe in terms of skill sets or, you know, personal qualities or, any dimension you'd like to choose. Just define or tell your own definition of entrepreneurship rather.
My definition is just largely more from a perspective of perseverance, right? Largely what happens with a lot of people who jump into the journey, they think that you become magicians. You're not a magician. You don't really have a magic wand where you're probably, making things work for you overnight, right? When I say perseverance, you have to be at it, right? You
Hmm.
cannot do it once and then fail and then probably say, hey, you know what, I do not want to do this because it was very painful.
Hmm.
So for me, if anybody wants to get into the journey, they need to have perseverance. They need to have faith and belief that there is light at the end of the tunnel, right? You cannot try it once and then probably just become, I would say, demotivated and then say, hey, you know what, it's not going to work for me. I think perseverance is the most important aspect to become an entrepreneur. That's the way I look at it.
Gotcha. My final question, tell us what are the different lessons that you have learned during your entrepreneurial journey, which others can take away, especially the people who are trying to build service businesses, they can take away and apply to their ventures.
I already said one point. I think it's always what we define as keep the faith, right? Second is, I think, don't really have a short term vision. I think it's important for people when they're building an organization. Uh, it does not happen overnight, right? You have to have a vision, which could be either a 2 year vision or a 3 year vision or a 5 year vision or probably a 10-year vision. when you have that vision and when you start breaking it down further, I think it's important to break the vision into smaller achievements, right? You may have a vision saying, I want to make this into a 10 crore company for purpose of discussion, or somebody may say, I want to make it into a 100 crore company, or somebody may say 1,000 crore company. When you break that 10 crores or 100 crores or 1,000 crores into smaller visions, right, is when the larger objective is met. So my take is that you may have a larger vision, but I think you need to have smaller targets to achieve the larger vision. And you have to be very dedicated and have a lot of perseverance to move in that direction to ensure that you take care of it. Uh, Third is, I think it's important that you have to be the I would say trendsetter, right? While you are an entrepreneur, it's not a necessity that you're the boss and you're the one who's probably going in late to work. How do you set? It's typically you have to set an example, right? Because that's when people follow. You're perceived as the leader of the company. So the leader of the company in India, at least, is perceived that he can never make a mistake, right? So how do you ensure that you live up to the expectation of either 10, 20, or 100 odd people who are looking up to you? Uh, the fourth aspect is also try and be there for them, right? While you build an organization, don't get lost on the aspect of humanity, right? Because a lot of people, from a perspective of losing employees, are because at times you have not been there for them personally because they needed your shoulder to probably cry on. I'm not
Mm.
saying give it all the time, but I'm saying they should know that if there is a situation, I could fall back onto my leadership team or my boss and at least discuss this with him. And he could give me a solve for something that I'm probably not able to get. So largely, I feel that this is what encapsulates a journey of entrepreneurs, right? And other than the journey, it encapsulates that you need to try and bucket yourself into these smaller aspects and then go after that vision that you're probably trying to achieve, importantly. So that's largely where it is.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Mirza. On this note, we are at the end of our session. It was a pleasure to have you on our platform, and our best wishes for Hammerhead Experiences.
Thanks, Priya. I look forward to meeting you shortly.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thanks.